There's a corner of a backyard in Phoenix that produces more fruit than most full-sized orchards in the suburbs. No tractor, no irrigation system, no acreage. Just 5 trees planted close together, picked clean every season by a family that hasn't bought fruit at the grocery store in years. That kind of yield from that little space sounds wrong. It goes against everything we're told about growing food. And one of those 5 trees does something stranger still. It produces more fruit when its roots are confined. Plant it in the open ground and it grows lazy. Put it in a container or a tight corner and it explodes. Most people have never heard that, and it's the reason small space growers often outproduce people with full yards. The part that matters today, in early May, is the planting window. Fruit trees have one, and it closes faster than most people think. After early June in most of the country, the soil heats up faster than young roots can keep up. A tree planted in late June spends its first summer in survival mode. Many die quietly in their first August. The ones that live tend to sit there stressed for 2 seasons before they give you anything worth picking. Wait 1 more year, and you're really waiting 3. So the question isn't really about space. It's about which 5 trees you can get in the ground over the next few weeks, because depending on where you live, the right combination can feed a family from a corner the size of a parking spot. The tree that produces more in tight space comes last. The other 4 come first, because depending on your climate, one of them might fit your backyard better than the rest. Before getting into the trees themselves, it helps to understand what you're racing against, because most people don't realize there's a race at all. A young fruit tree spends its first 90 days underground. Above the soil, it might look like nothing is happening. Below, it's pushing fine roots out into the soil and building the network it will rely on for the next 20 or 30 years. That work happens fast in cool, moist soil and slows down dramatically once the ground hits 85 degrees and stays there. Early June is the line. From the mid-Atlantic down through Texas and across to California, soil temperatures climb past that threshold in mid to late June. Plant before then, and the roots get the time they need. Plant after, and you're asking a tree to do its hardest work during the worst conditions of the year. A lot of trees don't survive it. The ones that do usually skip their first harvest. So the window is real. The trees on this list were chosen because they can be planted right now, fit in tight spaces, and start producing food fast enough to be worth the effort. The first tree is the Columnar Apple. The variety names worth knowing are North Pole and Golden Sentinel. These trees grow straight up, with almost no side branches. A mature columnar apple stands 8 to 10 feet tall, but stays under 2 feet wide for its entire life. You can plant 3 of them in a strip along a fence, and they look more like ornamental columns than fruit trees. But the fruit is full-sized, 15 to 25 apples per tree per year once established. The columnar apple fits cold climates well. North Pole was developed for the coldest growing regions in America, the kind of winters they get in northern Michigan, upstate New York, Minnesota, and most of Canada. If your region drops well below 0 every January, this is one of the few apple varieties that handles it without trouble. It also grows well in containers, so apartment patios and small balconies are not disqualified. What makes this one a good first pick is that it solves a specific problem most people don't admit to having. They say they have no space, but most have a strip somewhere. Along the side of a house, beside a driveway, against a fence line, columnar apples turn that strip into food. Next is Dwarf pomegranate. The variety names to look for are Nana and State Fair. Pomegranates have a reputation for being demanding, and the standard varieties can be. The dwarf versions are forgiving in a way that surprises people. They handle poor soil, inconsistent watering, and weeks of neglect without complaint. That last part matters more than most growers admit. A dwarf pomegranate stays around 4 to 6 feet tall, fits in a 15-gallon container, and produces 15 to 30 fruits in a good season. The fruit is the same deep red, jewel-seeded pomegranate you pay $6 for at the grocery store. The skin is thinner on the dwarf varieties, but the inside is identical. This tree works across the warmer half of the country. If you're in Texas, Arizona, the Deep South, or coastal California, it thrives on neglect. Anywhere colder than that, like the Mid-Atlantic or the Ohio Valley, plant it in a large pot and roll it into a garage, or unheated basement when temperatures drop below 20 degrees. It comes back the next year without complaint. The third tree might be the most underrated fruit tree in America, the jujube, sometimes called the Chinese date. The variety to plant is Li, which is self-fertile. You only need one tree to get fruit, and that alone separates it from most fruit trees. No worrying about pollinator pairs, no waiting for a neighbor's tree to bloom at the right time. The jujube fruit looks like a small apple and tastes somewhere between a date and a crisp pear, depending on when you pick it. Eaten fresh off the tree, it's a sweet, light snack. Dried, it stores for months and concentrates into something closer to a date. What earns this tree a spot on the list is its climate range. It grows from the cold winters of New England down through the deep south and the desert southwest. That's a broader range than almost anything else on this list. It tolerates desert heat and humid southeast summers. It barely cares about soil quality, pests rarely touch it, and it produces fruit within 2 or 3 years from planting. That's faster than most fruit trees. If you live somewhere that fluctuates between brutal summers and cold winters, this is the tree that quietly outperforms its more popular cousins. The fourth tree is the Meyer lemon, and it solves a problem the other 4 can't. A Meyer lemon is a cross between a regular lemon and a mandarin orange. Sweeter than a standard lemon, less acidic, and the tree itself stays small. A dwarf Meyer in a container tops out around 4 to 6 feet and produces 50 to 100 lemons a year once established. What makes this tree matter on this list is that it survives indoors. Citrus is fragile in cold climates if you plant it in the ground, but a Meyer lemon in a container can spend summer on a patio and winter near a sunny window. That makes it the tree for apartment dwellers, for people in Vermont and Minnesota, for most of Canada, and for the parts of the United Kingdom where outdoor citrus is impossible. A mature Meyer often has blossoms, green fruit, and ripe lemons on the tree all at once. There's a steadiness to that production most fruit trees can't offer. That brings us to the last tree, the one mentioned at the beginning, the one that produces more fruit when its roots are confined. It's the fig. Specifically Chicago hardy and Petite Negra. Most fruit trees treat tight space as stress. The fig treats it as a signal to start fruiting. A fig planted in a 15 to 20 gallon container will outproduce the same fig planted in open ground in most situations. It sounds backward, but it's documented and consistent. A single mature fig in a container can produce over 100 figs in one season, and some growers report even more than that. Fresh figs at the grocery store run $5 to $8 for a small clamshell, and they bruise within a day of picking. A young Chicago hardy seedling costs about $30. By the second harvest, this tree pays for itself in a single week. This tree is also the fastest on the list. Most figs produce a small harvest in their first year and a real harvest in their second. No other fruit tree here moves that quickly. For the international audience watching, the fig has been grown in the United Kingdom for centuries because it tolerates cool, wet climates better than most fruit trees. In Australia, the warm subtropical zones make figs almost too easy to grow, and in Canada, Chicago hardy lives up to its name. It survives winters as cold as upstate New York and the Great Lakes region, with minimal protection. Even when a hard winter kills it back to the ground, it regrows and fruits the same year. Most fruit trees fruit on old wood. A hard winter, a bad pruning, or an early frost can wipe out an entire year of harvest. Figs work differently. They fruit on new growth. That one detail changes the math. Lose your fig to a hard freeze, and the underground root system pushes up new shoots in spring. Those new shoots produce fruit by late summer. The tree barely loses a season. The container productivity has its own explanation. Figs evolved in rocky, root-restricted environments around the Mediterranean. Their genetics expect tight conditions. Give a fig too much room and it puts its energy into leaves and growth instead of fruit. Restrict the roots, and that energy shifts into figs. A lot of them. Add the fact that figs need very little spraying, no second tree for pollination, and minimal pruning, and you have something close to the ideal small space survival tree. That's why it goes last on this list. If you can only plant one tree this year, this is probably the one. If you're planting just one of these, here's what to do over the next 10 days. Order a 1-gallon Chicago hardy fig from a reputable mail-order nursery, or pick one up at a local garden center if you can find it. Don't pay extra for the biggest tree on the lot. Larger trees suffer more in transplant, sit there sulking for a season, and a 1-gallon plant in good soil will pass them within 2 years. Skip anything bigger than 3 gallons. Get a 15 to 20-gallon container with drainage holes. A grow bag works fine. So does a recycled food-grade bucket from a bakery, drilled for drainage. The container itself matters less than people think. The drainage matters a lot. Use a quality potting mix, not garden soil. Garden soil compacts in containers and starves the roots of oxygen. Place the container where it gets at least 6 hours of sun, ideally against a south-facing wall if you have one. The reflected heat helps. Water deeply once a week for the first month, then back off and let the top inch of soil dry between waterings. Figs prefer slightly stressed conditions, and overwatering is the most common way people kill them in the first season. Done now, you'll have figs by late summer. Done in July, you'll be waiting until next year. 5 trees, 1 window. The difference between a backyard that looks productive and one that feeds a family often comes down to which trees got planted and when. Start with the fig this season. Once that one is in the ground and producing, the other 4 become easier choices, and the backyard starts doing serious work. Drop a comment before you go. Which of these 5 fits your space, and where are you watching from? It helps to know what climates are represented here, because the right tree depends on where you live. If this video was useful, hit the like button and subscribe. There's a lot more practical content coming. Built for real backyards, not fantasy homesteads. Honestly, I'd order the Chicago Hardy Fig today and have it in a container by next weekend. Of every tree on this list, it's the one that gives back fastest, forgives the most mistakes, and produces food in spaces most people would write off as too small to bother.